Hey guys, this is Scott Lecrae, and welcome to something very special. This is my first Let's Play that I'm going to be doing on this channel, and I decided to do probably one of my favorite games of all time. Or certainly one of my favorite games of all time. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Just a little disclaimer, the way I'm going to handle this Let's Play is I'm going to be talking about things about the game, but I'm also going to be reflecting on my own personal experience with the game. Because it's a game that's very close to my heart. Not only did it really hook me into gaming in terms of showing me something truly wonderful and special, it really had an effect on my childhood and my sense of adventure and exploration, which I still resonates with me, not only in video games, but in real life to a certain degree as well. But I absolutely love this game. It is not without its flaws, as a Zelda game and as a game in general, but overall it's incredible, and the way that they took such a complex and amazing game that was A Link to the Past and changed that formula into 3D almost seamlessly. But there are some issues with that transition, which I'll get into as we play through. Now, I always name my character Link. I kind of feel like I have to do this because Miyamoto once said that the reason that they called the main character Link was that he represented a connection between the player and the world, and I find that really cool. That's just a really novel but awesome concept. So we are beginning. There is a great guardian spirit known as the Deku Tree. I'm sure just about everyone's played this game, but I'll certainly not be skipping over plot elements, just in case you haven't. So basically there are these children who live in this forest, and each of them have their own guardian fairy. Except for one, this young lad here, who just happens to be our protagonist. I don't think that's a spoiler, but if it is, I don't really care. Screw you. It's not important, alright? You were gonna find out anyway. So he has nightmares every night. And we see a castle. And these nightmares basically are causing him a lot of grief, but he can't help but feel that there's something significant about them, and particularly that girl there. You might be able to guess who that is if you played any Zelda game ever. And if you haven't, well, you'll find out who she is. I find it interesting, a lot of people seem to struggle with pronouncing Deku. I've heard people say Deku, very strange other pronunciations which I can't even recall right now. But it's clearly based, even just going on the sole fact that it's Japanese, it must be Deku. That's just how they would say it, and they invented it, and therefore it is Deku. So sorry if you say it any other way, but it's not really valid. Although, admittedly, I think I did call it the Deku Tree when I was younger. But, you know, I was 6 when I played this game the first time. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out that they obviously intended it to be pronounced Deku. But I still hear people who say really weird, bizarre things. Like Deku, Deku, who knows. But I digress. So basically, the Deku Tree is saying that to this fairy, who, I don't know why this fairy doesn't belong to anyone. I guess Navi is the personal fairy of Great Deku Tree. That's the only thing I can think of. But anyway, she's got to go and find this boy and set him on a journey. A journey that will change the course of Hyrule. A journey that will maybe save Hyrule. From what? Could it be that man we saw in the vision earlier? It probably is, but I'm not going to spoil it. I guess I did just spoil it. But anyway, you know, you've played this game, surely. Don't tell me you haven't. If you haven't, there's something very wrong with you. Go play it now. Go play this game. Stop watching me playing it. Well, don't do that. I want you to stay. But seriously, play this game. If you're not convinced, just keep watching. You will see why you need to play this game. So Navi has found Link, and unfortunately he's, much like myself, quite hard to wake up. Although I'm usually not having nightmares. Although recently I have had a couple that were quite strange, including one where I was on the floor paralyzed. And the weird thing about it was, I was afraid I was going to wake someone in my house up, and then ironically I woke up to the sound of that person making breakfast. So that was kind of freaky, but that has nothing to do with Zelda. So Navi successfully woke up Link. Good. I mean, what we're going to do if the hero just slept the entire game? Well, first of all, we wouldn't be playing, and second of all, we wouldn't be having a very, very interesting time. So, she's pretty keen for us to get going, get moving. Let's get started on this quest. Thankfully, finally, alright. So we're going to head outside into Kokiri Forest, leaving Link's house. But, of course, we are going to be greeted by Saria, Link's best and I believe only childhood friend, although I could be wrong about that. So, we're going to backflip off the ladder, or off the treehouse rather, because badasses do that, and Saria is really impressed that Link finally has a fairy. And she's actually really happy for him, because, you know, he was probably picked on by some of the other kids in the Kokiri Forest. You know, I mean, he's strange, why wouldn't he have a fairy when everyone else does? Could that be a plot point? Ooh, it might be, but, you know, I'm not actually going to spoil that one as to why. Because, you know, I'm already on a bad track record. But we've evened the ledger now, 50-50 for good call, bad call in regards to spoilers. So, what I need to do, first of all, is gather enough rupees, which are the currency of the game, to be able to afford a shield. For those of you who haven't played this game, in order to get to the first dungeon, or actually just to get to the Deku Tree in general, there's a guy who's guarding the entrance to the Deku Tree, and he won't let you pass unless you are equipped with a sword and a shield, because he believes it's too dangerous for you to head that way. Why the pathway to the Deku Tree is dangerous, I don't know. I mean, is it? Yes. But does it make sense why it is? No. I mean, he's the guardian of the forest. You'd think he'd be able to keep his shit together. But, whatever. So the cool thing is you can jump, do some backflips near these rocks to get some money. And you'll notice I collected also another blue rupee behind one of the houses. Blue rupees are worth 5. Green rupees, which are worth 1. So, obviously getting blue rupees is a little quicker than just simply running around grabbing single ones. And there's a couple more in here which I can collect. There's also a giant boulder, which I really don't want to hit me, because that would make me lose some health. And I'm sure Link wouldn't appreciate being a pancake. But, we also have this treasure chest, our first, and we get the classic opening of the treasure chest music and fanfare. And it is the Kokiri sword, which is obviously a sacred blade of the Kokiri people. It's not very strong, but it's the best we're going to have for a while. And it's also quite small. Hopefully I will show it off eventually. But as you can see in that little picture there, it's very small. It's basically a dagger. Even Link being a kid, it still isn't a large sword at all. When you think about swords that would be designed for kids, they would still be longer in length than that. You can tell if you look at the scabbard, it only comes like... Does it even come all the way across his back? I think no. Well, it comes down to his belt line, which swords actually, if you think about scabbards, they're usually a lot longer than that. And you'll notice I chopped that sign and got another 5 rupees, so now I'm only 1 rupee off, but I'm going to go to the store anyway, despite not having enough. And the reason for that will become clear in time. And this chick always wants you to talk to her by using L targeting, of course Z targeting in the original game. But the reason I didn't bother getting any of it is because there is a 5 rupee just there that you can, I guess, steal from the shopkeeper. I don't know. But I can buy the Deku shield, and now we have both a sword and a shield, so obviously we are fully equipped to go into the Deku Tree. Or head into the Deku Tree's area and speak to him. But first I must equip it, obviously. And it's pretty cool. It's a decent shield. I mean, it's the only one that you can wield efficiently for a very long time. But it's also made out of wood, so you have to be careful not to get it set alight, because it'll burn up completely. Like, you won't even be able to repair it, it'll just be gone. and you'll have to buy a new one. And they're not pricey. I mean, 40 rupees isn't too bad, and granted, in the one area where they are going to probably burn up, in all likelihood, there is another one you can get within that area, so it's not that big a deal. But you shouldn't even be using the Deku Shield in that area anyway, for the sole reason that you don't want it to burn. Like, that's just a good precaution. Anyway, now we got a Deku Stick, and I just decided I'm going to grab a few of these because running out would not be ideal when we're inside the Deku Tree. I just realized something. Okay, he's called the Great Deku Tree, right? And he's a good guy. I think that's kind of indisputable. But then why are those little plants I was just fighting are called Deku Bubbas, and there are other enemies around also called Deku Scrubs? Why? What? Deku? Yeah, is that like... What is the does that mean just like things that live in the forest? I don't understand. And why would the Deku Tree then go by that name if it was associated with evil? Am I just overthinking this? Probably. But it's an interesting point nonetheless. So, the Great Deku Tree is saying, come on guys, I'm cursed, so you gotta go inside and break the curse. Because if you don't break the curse, bad shit's gonna happen. So, you know, being the jolly young adventurer that I am, I'm heading in and we are going to solve this mystery as to what is up with the Deku Tree. And of course Navi wants to talk to me, but I don't want to talk to Navi because Navi's freaking annoying, and you will see why Navi is so goddamn annoying. This dungeon encapsulates why Navi is annoying. But anyway, we gotta climb up this ladder. This is not a difficult dungeon. It's a bit confusing in regards to its layout. It has like several tiered levels. It's a very vertical dungeon, which is interesting for a first dungeon. But the map is like right here. It's freaking, you just climb up those stairs and you walk across. It's that simple. It's pretty much giving it to you on a silver platter. And here we go, here's Navi interrupting to tell me that these walls might be able to be climbed. Which, granted, is something useful to know the very first time you're playing this game, but you probably could have worked it out by yourself. And, yet again, you can open a door by standing in front of it and pressing A. Well, no shit! Like, is that necessary? The game just started to introduce bullshit hand-holding that had never been in the series before. And it's mainly in this first part of the game, but it's still really irritating. Anyway, we've beat this Deku Scrub, and he gives us a little handy hint that if we're falling off a cliff, if we hold forward, we may do a roll and not get as much hurt. Although we still will get hurt if the cliff is really high. And I never quite got the characterization of these guys. Like, they're helping you, but only because you beat them, and then they're kind of like sinisterly laughing at you, and they're kind of uneasy, and I don't know, it's really weird. So anyway, in this room, you never want to jump straight onto that block there. I mean, you can do it, it's not going to be too bad, but for reasons I'll explain in a moment, it's a lot easier if you leave it up. So here we have the dungeon item for the Deku Tree dungeon. And it's pretty cool. It's the fairy slingshot. And I never had, I mean, I did make some sort of makeshift slingshots when I was a kid, but I never really made them well, at least not to the point that I could use them effectively. So this was always like one of my favorite items in the game. It just, there's something really cool about having a slingshot. It just made me feel like a badass. And the fact that Link can use it with such accuracy is just amazing. So the reason you want to keep that block up is so you can just jump over like that. It's just quicker. Like, there is a ladder up surrounded by cobwebs, which you can shoot down using the newly acquired slingshot, but it's just faster that way, so it's easier to leave it. So we can shoot down these Skulltulas. There is a third one a little further up, right there. We can take him out, and now we can climb these vines. If you don't clear them out, then they're going to swarm you and kill you, which is not good. Yes, so back to this dungeon. Yeah, it's interesting, because, as you can see, we've climbed up here now, and we're on another level. So you would think that in most first dungeons, that they wouldn't be so multi-tiered, but it is a trend that continued in the other series, like Wind Waker. Dragon Rouge Island was very vertical, and so too, actually, the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess, I think, was actually quite quite normal. And I got very lucky just then. That could have ended badly. Anyway, this here is a gold Scatula, and killing it gets you a gold Scatula token, which we will find out later exactly what they do. But suffice to say, you want to collect a decent number of those. Certainly get as many as you can if you see them. You do not want to ignore them. Up till a point. But you have to get a decent amount to get everything that you can possibly get for collecting them, so it's worth doing. Now we can jump across here. These platforms are timed, so you do need to do it with a certain degree of competence, but it's not that difficult. And we find yet another chest. Now, young Link, in the first dungeons of the game, only have 3 big chests in each of them. One for the map, one for the compass, which we just acquired, and one for the dungeon item. The compass marks on your map where you entered the room, where you currently are in the room, and any chests that you haven't found within the dungeon. I believe it does that in Ocarina of Time. The compass's function sort of varies a bit from game to game. I will have to double check that, but I'm pretty certain that that's what this one does. So yes, here's a little tricky bit too, which throws a lot of players. You need to jump down and break the web, which probably wouldn't be abundantly clear, especially if you sort of breezed past the web to begin with. But it's cool. It shows that they had some fun with the design of this game. It's kind of got a spiderish theme, if you hadn't caught on to that yet, and with good reason. So here's another couple of Skulltulas we can grab, getting our total up to 3. There is a 4th in this dungeon, but you can't actually get it on your initial trip through, which is very irritating because there's absolutely no other reason to come back to this place other than to grab that Skulltula. So unless you're going for a 100% completion run, there's almost no point in coming back here and getting that Skulltula. Like, it's easier just to ignore that one from efficiency's point of view. And here we have another Deku Scrub, who is going to tell us something interesting. If we spare him, he's going to teach us something cool. And basically there is a trio of Deku Scrub brothers that are actually his brothers, so I'm not quite sure why he's not with them. But he said if we defeat them in a special order, we'll be able to pass, which is 2, 3, 1. 23 is number 1. But then he says, like, do you think I'm a traitor? And it's like, well, yes. Clearly you're a traitor. I don't know. Again, I don't understand the characterization of them in this game. So here's this is the first time I ever got stumped in the game when I was originally playing it back when I was 6 years old. I just could not work out how to dive down and hit that switch. It's because the pressure is important. You need to hold the button to dive down deeper. Whereas I was just tapping it, so I was basically just bobbing up and down in the water, and it frustrated me so much. But I had a family friend help me get past that, because I was at their place. I didn't actually own this, I didn't have a 64. But I was playing it at their place, and eventually they were like, oh, you just have to hold it, and I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, that was my introduction to this game, the first time I ever played it. And I loved it, I thought it was great. And here's Navi yet again, pestering us, teaching us how to push a block, which, you know, yes, I mean, we don't know how to do that yet, technically, but it's not hard to work out. Everything in this game revolves around the action button and the context of the action button, which is one thing that she repeats that is useful to know. Pay attention to what it says, because, you know, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be performing the action that it says in the context. But it's just so irritating. I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they were thinking that changing into... moving the series into 3D was going to make things a lot more complicated, which I don't think it did. I think it actually made it easier in a lot of ways, because they streamlined it a lot. But more on that later. More on that later. So here we have another Skulltula, who constantly reveals his back to you, so he's not really much of a challenge. This room here, you can see that there's like a brown wall that looks kind of, well, fragile. If you come back here with bombs, you can blow that up, and that's where the 4th Skulltula is. Gold Skulltula, that is. But, again, it's not worth your time. Seriously. Unless you're doing 100% completion, forget about it. Speaking of 100% completion, how I'm going to be handling this playthrough is I'm just going to be doing the main storyline. I'm not going to be collecting pieces of heart or anything like that. I might grab some Skulltulas, or actually there really isn't much point in grabbing them if I'm not collecting all the pieces of heart. Maybe a few, just for some minor things. Will I be getting optional items? Maybe, that's undecided at this point, but it's basically going to be quite quick, just to kind of get through it, because I'm keen on just completing a playthrough of something, and then after that I'll do like more specific things, 100% runs, special things, like I've never done a 3 heart challenge, which is something that could be quite fun. Anyway, these are those brothers that the other one was telling us about, so we've hit the second one, we hit the third one, and now the first one is susceptible, just like the other ones were. And he is like totally outraged. He's like, how the hell did you know that? What is this? And he says, well, I'm going to tell you the secret of our queen, Goma. You need to strike with your sword while she's stunned. So, is he apologizing to you for being inconvenient, or is he apologizing to the queen for giving away a secret? I don't know. But anyway, here we come to the first boss fight in Ocarina of Time. And it's really cool because you walk in and you're like, where's this boss? I don't know. Where is it? What's happening? And then the door slams behind you and you're like, okay, well, yeah, something's happening. And then you can hear this. You can hear this incessant noise. And then you look up and you trigger the boss fight against Queen Goma. I always thought that was really cool. But yeah, actually, I mean, I didn't realize you had to do it when I first played through this game. Again, someone had to tell me. But it's just a really nice effect that you have to, like, lock eyes with a parasitic armored arachnid. Here we go. Now, this is a really easy boss. You just shoot your slingshot off, stun it, wail into it with your sword. Then it starts to run away. Now, what it wants to do is it wants to get up to the ceiling so it can lay some babies, because obviously if it outnumbers you, it's going to have a better chance. But if you just follow it, you can make sure your lock doesn't go get unstuck. Wait till the eye goes red, and blam, fall down, do a jump attack or two, lay into it, and dead. So simple. I cannot recall ever taking any damage to this boss. I probably did when I first played this, way back when, but since then I have never been hurt by Goma. I think maybe once she laid some children, and they hurt me, but that's it. So you get a heart container for every boss you defeat, which increases your life by 1 heart, which is very useful. So I am going to be collecting those as I go through all the dungeons, but I won't be bothering with pieces of heart. Pieces of heart, if you collect 4 pieces of heart, you get a full heart container, and they're basically rewarded for doing side quests and interesting little challenges throughout the game. The Great Deku Tree is... Deku Tree? I called it the Deku Tree. There we go. I shouldn't have mouthed off at everyone else. I'm just as guilty. The Great Deku Tree is pleased with our efforts and wishes to tell us more. Apparently, a wicked man of the desert cast the curse upon him. And as we see, he is riding a horse, and he is that man from Link's dream. Which means... are they somehow connected? And what is his goals? What is he after? Deku Tree is informing us that he's looking for the Sacred Realm. Because the Sacred Realm is home to the Triforce, which is a very, very important relic within the Zelda universe. And we're about to hear about its creation. So we have the 3 goddesses that descended upon the chaos that was Hyrule, before it formed into the land we know today. There are 3. Din, the goddess of power, Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, and of course, Farore, the goddess of courage. And they are 3 very important virtues for a particular reason. Din using her power, which is obviously very, very immense to be able to do this, created land. Now that's not something, that's not easy. Who can do that? There's not many people who can do that. So she's obviously pretty serious. Nehru conversely used her wisdom to create the spirit of law. So I interpret that as being kind of like the physics and the sun and all that, all nature, basically. And for Raw, gave the soul, so that's obviously for all the people, you know, to be more than just living beings, to be beings of character and feelings and emotions and that kind of stuff. And then after they'd finished this quite arduous task, I would believe, they went back to the heavens and they all met at a point. And when the three of them collided, they transformed into the golden sacred triangles known as the Triforce, which are the most sacred of relics in Hyrule. And where they were formed is now known as the Sacred Realm, where the Triforce resides. So yeah, this game's story is pretty cool. It's not super in-depth, but at the time it was more than adequate, and it definitely resonates because it's a hero story of good versus evil, and you know, evil wanting to obtain ultimate power to throw a land into chaos, and obviously someone rising up from the land to defend it. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples of that in literature. The most obvious that strikes me is probably Star Wars. And there's a lot of similarities between Link and Luke. Even in sort of their character progression, which is interesting because Link doesn't say anything. But I think it's just that common archetype, that sort of farmer boy archetype, coming from small beginnings and really growing on a journey. But anyway, the Great Deku Tree has awarded us with something very special, a very sacred artifact, the Spiritual Stone of the Forest, also known as the Kokiri's Emerald. We don't quite know the significance of this thing at the moment, but let's just say it's fairly important, and we do not want to lose it. Now, the Great Deku Tree, unfortunately, is passing away because, despite the fact that Link managed to break the curse, he was already too far along to be saved, which is quite sad. I always found this quite sad, because he's kind of like the closest thing that this game has to a father figure, starting off at least. And yeah, I thought, wow, I did never, when I was a kid, I did not expect that. I didn't expect him to die. And Navi kind of catches a last glimpse of her former friend. And no doubt he was a father figure for Navi as well. And of course Mido, the guard, is pissed off because he's realized that the Deku Tree has died. And he is going to tell everyone, and Link is going to be basically, you know, hated by the village now. Well, not hated, but he's at least going to try and spread the propaganda that it was Link's fault and Link killed the Great Deku Tree. Which is, of course, total bullshit. Like, he has no idea. I don't even know how he knows that he's dead. Like, he didn't even walk up to have a look. We have one more thing to take care of this episode. Someone knows that Link has to leave, and she's been waiting for him, and that is Saria. Saria doesn't want to send Link off without, you know, showing that she supports him, and that she's okay, and she knew that this day was going to come. And she says it's because he's different to them, which is interesting. And there will be some plot significance for that. And she doesn't want Link to forget about her, so she gives him an ocarina. Now, the significance of ocarinas in this game is quite high, and we will learn about that in future installments. But suffice to say, the fairy ocarina given by Saria is meant to just remind Link that he has a home. Even if he is different, there's always people waiting for him, and Saria in particular will always be thinking of him while he's out on his quest. Which I think, even though Link isn't a character who expresses emotions or voices his thoughts, I kind of feel like in my mind that this is integral to him as someone who has to go through trials and hardships, knowing that he has a place to return to, he has a best friend waiting for him, And I think the fact that he kind of backs away there and then runs away, sort of reluctantly and almost like hurriedly because he wants it to end because it hurts so much, it speaks for his character. So, now we have come to Hyrule Field, which is quite an expansive bit of land which connects all the different areas of Hyrule together. We won't be exploring it today, but if you join me next time, we'll definitely be heading in further and probably getting to the castle. Definitely getting to the castle and potentially getting to the next dungeon. So please join me then, and we will have a great time. Hope you enjoyed this video, and please leave a comment, like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will catch you then. Have a good day, everyone.